Welcome back, guys, to Phoenix Wright, Spirit of Justice, where last episode we started our second day in trial with Sorin Sprocket now on the stand. However, the testimony just kind of led us round in a circle, so now we're hoping to get greater detail about Sorin's movements that night. Testify for me! The truth. The whole truth? Nothing but? The truth is, I went to the Vista deck with Pierce. That's why my name doesn't appear on the hold entry record. I was badly injured from being stabbed, but I was frantic. By the time we reached the scene, it was all over. Well, this doesn't help me one bit. Mr. Sprocket, you concealed information from us time and time again. Who do you think you are, treating this court of law with such irreverence? That being said, I do appreciate the testimony you gave just now. Thanks to you, we now know why your name doesn't appear on the entry record. Now, there are no more inconsistencies in the witness's testimony. That's Mr. Edgeworth for you. He never leaves a loose end dangling. You okay, Nick? I wouldn't exactly call this situation okay. Somehow, I'll have to coax the information we need for an opening out of him. If I even can, that is. Well, it's time to cross-examine. Press. The truth is, I went to the Vista deck with Pierce. Hold it! You didn't mention this because you didn't want Mr. Nickety to fall under suspicion. Is that because he has something to hide? I just didn't want the police to take up his time with all their questions, that's all. But your time's fine. Neither the company nor the household would function smoothly without him. I see. Wow, it sounds like Pierce is absolutely indispensable to the Sprockets. Anyway, getting back to your statement. When did you meet up with Mr. Nickety? We met up on my way to the Vista deck. I think Pierce and some of my relatives were on another floor. But Pierce heard the commotion and came running to my aid. He could hear the pandemonium all the way from another floor.
Mr. Wright, would you like the current statement added to the witness's testimony?
Hey, why not? Yes, please, Your Honor.
Very well.
Pierce heard the commotion, and he came running. Hold it! Did Mr. Nickety come alone? I believe some of his subordinates were with him, but I don't remember exactly how many. He may say there were others, but seeing how they pulled that second reception off, I can't completely trust anything he has to say either. I see. So you, Mr. Nickety, and a few others headed to the Vista deck, is that right? That's right. I'm just wondering how we can refute that statement, because then there's like loads of people on the scene, isn't there? That's why my name doesn't appear on the hold entry records. Hold it! Your name doesn't appear on the hold entry record. Because you entered with Mr. Nickety using his keycard. That's right. So I guess the hold entry record doesn't matter as much as we thought. But now that Sorin's saying he was with Pierce and a few others, it's pretty tough to refute that statement. What's the matter, Mr. Wright? Cat got your tongue? Did you finally realize there's no point in continuing this trial any longer? Of course not. I want that smug look off your face. Mr. Sprocket, please continue with your testimony. I was badly injured from being stabbed, but I was frantic. Were you now? Hold it! I don't think I've got any evidence that just says there were no one else on the scene. Which is kind of annoying, because that's what it sounds like a statement would need me to say back. Speaking of your injury, how are you doing now? The knife wound is deep and continues to throb with pain. Fortunately, my internal organs were spared. But one wrong move would have spelled the end for me there. Even so, I've seen you up and about all over the place since the incident. I'm only following my doctor's orders to perform some daily light exercises.
Mr. Wright, would you like Mr. Sprocket's statement about his condition added to his testimony? Not that it appears especially relevant to me.
Should I have him add it to his testimony? Why not? Again. If I can't find anything, at least the end of the testimony statement will always give me that kind of little hint. Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to have added to his testimony.
I see. Very well.
The knife wound. Oh! It's quite deep and can use to throb with pain. Oh, no. Aha! You weren't stabbed with a knife. You were stabbed with a candelabra. Oh. So that first bit was completely useless for me.
Okay.
Objection!
But this is obvious. Mr. Sprocket, you just said your injury is a knife wound, didn't you? Why did I not catch that when you said it the first time? But the weapon you were stabbed with was this candelabra. A fact I know you're quite aware of. Well, you should be. Very well. This is what I heard directly from Master Sorin himself. As you surmise, Master Sorin was stabbed by Gloomsbury on the day of the murder. It happened after the first wedding reception. The happy couple was in the reception hall when suddenly Gloomsbury appeared. He attacked Miss Ellen and tried to take her away. Master Sorin went to stop him and found himself in a struggle with Gloomsbury. That is when Master Sorin was stabbed with a candelabra, he said.
Objection!
It must have been a simple memory slip that made him speak. It happens to everyone. It has nothing to do with the case. You must be pretty desperate to point out something so minute.
I have to agree, Mr. Wright. You hardly need to make such a big deal over such a small mistake.
But I contend that it's an important inconsistency. Besides, I couldn't find anything else. This is the only thing I have to go after.
It really was, actually.
And I say it's not important. Now let's not waste any more time on this matter.
I agree. Everybody has a little memory lapse every now and then.
Hold it!
But Your Honor, please let me explain.
But can you? Can you really explain to this court what makes this slip so important?
Yes, I can, Your Honor. After all, it was Sorin himself who told Pierce that he had been stabbed by a candelabra. This is more than a simple memory slip. There has to be some kind of reason for it.
Well, Mr. Wright, please explain why the witness's slip of the tongue is so important.
The point to focus on here is why the witness would mistake the weapon used to stab him. Think carefully, Phoenix. This could very well change the course of the trial. Because there's no candelabras outside.
I see. So why did the witness make that mistake, Mr. Wright?
Mr. Sprocket identified the wrong weapon used against him because he mistook he's covering for someone who has no memory of it. Maybe he doesn't. Well, he misspoke would be conceding to the prosecution. Why would he cover for someone and let his wife go down? Or a future wife? That makes no sense either. If it was someone else entirely apart from himself, then he wouldn't cover, wouldn't he? Or, you know, because I think you'd go with your wife before someone else entirely. Or at least the person you love, let's put it that way. So he must have no memory of it. He doesn't remember the incident, let alone the weapon used against him. Not only that, but I believe Mr. Sprocket has some sort of memory disorder. Therefore, the defense contends that Mr. Sprocket's testimony thus far is invalid.
Objection!
Which is why he takes all the notes, yeah? Just because you can find a flaw in his testimony, you want to throw it all out. Your baseless claim is nothing but pure slander of the witness's character.
Miss Edgeworth is correct, Mr. Wright. Can you explain your grounds for making this claim?
Of course, Your Honor. Think of what Sorin has said, how he's behaved. That's where I'll find a clue.
Very well, let's hear your argument then.
My grounds for claiming that Mr. Sprocket has a memory disorder is obviously his notebook by the look of it. His airplane pen. He has a flighty memory. A notebook he always has with him. I saw daily events and information about the people around him recording it.
Like a diary, perhaps?
No, Your Honor. It's much too detailed to be an ordinary diary. It's more on the order of a database, actually.
A database, you say?
That's right. For some reason, Mr. Sprocket is apparently unable to retain memories. I mean, the car crash. That's why he writes every little detail of his life down in his notebook.
Objection!
How could you possibly know that for sure? You might just be an extremely compulsive person. I thought so too myself, at first. To be honest, we accidentally got a stain on that notebook yesterday. You mean you got a stain on it? Hey, you're the one who tried to grab it out of my...
Objection!
Never mind whose fault it was. Just get the point already. Right, sorry. Mr. Sprocket. The page Miss Faye got a stain on yesterday. That's the page with the details of your stabbing on it, isn't it? No, I only write in this notebook because I'm very compulsive. Now drop the subject already. Sorry, but I'm not convinced. I know it's an odd fact about your notebook, Mr. Sprocket. On the earlier pages, you used it to write down invention ideas. But after a certain date, you started writing down a lot more, and in much more detail. I believe your memory disorder stems from what happened on that date.
And something so monumental it caused a memory disorder, Mr. Wright.
You don't know what you're talking about. Sorry, but I do know what I'm talking about, and this is the proof. This is the thing that caused Mr. Sprocket's memory disorder. So we're talking about the crash.
Take that!
Must be that. You were involved in this car accident too, weren't you, Mr. Sprocket? And the shock of losing your beloved older sister is what caused you to develop your memory disorder. Is this true, Mr. Sprocket?
Well, is it?
Mr. Sprocket. It's true. That accident did something to my mind. What? Ever since that day, every time I go to sleep, I lose my memories. And when I wake up, the most recent thing I can remember is the day I lost my sister. It's as if I'm constantly going back in time.
What? That's truly tragic.
An inconsolable time traveler who goes back in time whenever he goes to sleep. Besides, time travelers do exist, you know. But you wouldn't understand. So that's what Sorin meant. He was talking about himself. The reactions of the people around me each time I awoke made me aware of my condition. That's why I decided to write everything down in my notebook, so I could move forward. So the only memories you have since that day are the ones written in that notebook. That's right. And since the page about your stabbing got stained, you couldn't read from it, could you? There's just one more thing I'd like you to clarify for me, Mrs. Sprocket. Exactly what are your feelings toward the victim?
Mrs. Sprocket's feelings towards Dumas Gloomsbury.
That's right, Your Honor. The witness said that every time he wakes up from sleep, his mind goes back to the day his sister died. Mr. Wright, you can't mean... Mr. Sprocket. Your pent-up feelings of anger and resentment towards Mr. Gloomsbury for the accident were renewed each and every time you woke, were they not? You couldn't take it anymore, so you turned to murder, isn't that right?
What? Mr. Wright, are you saying that the witness murdered Mr. Gloomsbury? For revenge?
Well, Mr. Sprocket? Miss Wyatt? Your Honor, I did it. I killed Mr. Gloomsbury. No!
What? What?
Had to do it now, didn't you? Miss Wyatt? What are you trying to do? Don't tell me you're still thinking of going in that route. Sorin's innocent. He can't be found guilty. Take me instead. Ellen, please. Try and get a hold of yourself. guess she really meant it. My Sorin didn't do anything wrong. I'm the one who should be convicted.
Are we to understand that you're confessing your guilt?
No, no, no. Now wait just a minute here. Ellen, why would you cover for me? After I testified that I thought you must have killed him. I'll admit, I couldn't believe my ears at first. But all I want is for you to be happy. Your happiness is my happiness, Sorin. Without my notebook, I'd even forget those feelings of yours by tomorrow. Knowing that, you still feel this way. You've loved me all this time. The same way you did before the accident. That's how I know that you're the same person I've always loved. No disorder can change that. Ellen. Your Honor, there are two things I'd like to correct.
Two corrections. What are they?
First of all, I want to withdraw one of my statements. That's right. Dumas was killed. By Ellen. Without memories to rely on, I took the police completely at their word. You can't be serious. So that means Sorin never really doubted Ellen in the first place, did he, Nick? Ellen really does love Sorin with all her heart. But in order to save her, I'll still have to go after Sorin. Hope you forgive me, Ellen.
And what is your other correction, Mr. Sprocket?
The truth is, I never felt anger or resentments towards Dumas about my sister. What? Why not? That's because the one who caused the car accident was me. What?
Order! Order in the court! And please continue, Mr. Sprocket.
I'm the one who killed my sister. To protect my career and my future, my father made Dumas take the blame. In exchange for money and the position of lead servant. Oh? Which also removes your motive, right? So you see, Dumas must have held a grudge against me, not the other way around. And he must have attacked Ellen to get his revenge on me. Are you sure about all of this, Mr. Sprocket? Very sure. It's all been written down in detail in my notebook.
That notebook is important evidence supplying background to this case. I must insist you submit it as evidence.
Yeah, indeed, it should be evidence. But also, what's the likelihood of someone forging pages to make it like he put those down as memories? The lawyer said I had turned to murder, but that's just not true. However, it is true that my older sister and Dumas are both dead because of me and my negligence.
I just glanced through Mr. Sprocket's notebook. I wasn't able to read the part about when he was stabbed due to the bloodstain. What's written here about his sister's car accident is exactly as he stated.
Your Honor, as long as it matches what's written in that notebook, can we still take the witness's testimony as valid in spite of his memory disorder?
Yes, I believe we can.
I understand now. The witness's memory is in disarray. But if what Mr. Sprocket himself wrote in his notebook is true, then that means by the time Mr. Sprocket's party reached the scene, the victim had already been killed. Edgeworth's right. I'm still in the same bind as before. But should I really simply accept the contents of the notebook as a substitute for Sorin's memory?
Well, Mr. Wright, what do you think? Will you accept Mr. Sprocket's notebook as an official representation of his memories?
Will I accept Mr. Sprocket's notebook as an official representation of his memories? No. The likelihood of, maybe being able to copy the handwriting and then becoming a forger from that point onwards, and basically replace someone's memories, is too damn high. Just like the rent. Wait a minute. Your Honor. The defense requests a chance to examine the notebook to see if it's trustworthy.
Very well, but be quick about it.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, how should we examine it? Well, we should look at it from all different angles to see if there's anything suspicious. Right, analysis, you say? Well, first of all, I've got to, like, actually, like, yeah. Yeah. There's no point if I don't look at what's inside. I have to open it. With your permission, Sorin, here I go. So that's step one. Opening it is always step one. Bloodstained. Yikes! Oh, it's just a page my got all stained. But I guess it's not going to be very helpful at this moment. I'll keep going. This is the last page where there's writing. Something about this page doesn't sit right with me. I'd better take a closer look. Right, okay, well, just examine over here. Huh. A page has been torn out. And it looks like there was something written on it. It looks like a page has been torn out here. Mr. Sprocket, do you know what was written on it? Oh, that. I often tear out a page when I write somebody a note. I probably wrote something down for somebody, tore it out, and gave it to them. Oh, yeah. That solves that, then.
Objection!
Wait a minute. We can't ignore the possibility that something important was written on that page.
But now that the page has been torn out, how can we determine what was written there?
Well, let's see. To find out what was written in the notebook, we should, well, hold it up to the light. No. Heat it with a lighter. No. Are we, like, remembering the past here? And use fingerprint powder. Obviously, he's going to be the only one that's obviously anything logical. If we use fingerprint powder on the notebook, we might be able to see what was written. I mean, the other thing would be looking at indentations on the next page, surely.
Fingerprint powder! How will that help us find out what was written there?
Well, if the writing left indentations on the blank page behind it... Oh, we're using fingerprint powder for the indentations? I was just like, that's the only option that's obviously not nonsensical. Fingerprint powder could make those small indentations visible to the naked eye. Oh, stop. Fingerprint powder would only sully the notebook further.
Mr. Wright, if you use the powder and still don't find anything, and you must accept the notebook as a representation of the witness's memories.
Alright, Your Honor, I understand. If I don't find anything, it's all over anyway. Powder, don't fail me now. I will now use fingerprint powder on the blank page to find out if we can see what was written on the torn out page. First, I touch the spot to dust it with fingerprint powder. When I've dusted on enough powder, I blow into the mic. Okay, so I should stop talking because we figured out that's a thing. To blow the excess powder away, if something should appear, I should touch analyze. Point to what came up, then touch confirm. Okay. And powder. Oh, damn. It's me talking is causing the bad things. Looks like I've actually found something. Oh, hello. I'm a bit too high up. I struck and... I struck and killed Dumas? Uh-oh. It says I struck and killed Dumas. This is huge. Also, like, the handwriting is completely different, isn't it? He has nice joined up handwriting. I struck and killed Dumas. That's what was written on the torn out page.
What?
It can't be. I don't believe it. There has to be some kind of mistake. Sorin would never, could never. Oh. Miss Wyatt.
Bailiff, please get the defendant to the infirmary at once. Apparently the defendant got too worked up. He's resting in the infirmary as we speak. And now then, please continue, Mr. Wright.
Yes, Your Honor. This notebook is all Mr. Sprocket has to remember things by. With this critical page torn out, not even Mr. Sprocket himself knew the truth of what he'd done. I'm the one who killed Dumas? So it wasn't Ellen. Oh, thank goodness. Mr. Sprocket, does this mean you were at the crime scene during the murder after all? I guess I must have been. That's the point. It's all a guess for him. But Mr. Sprocket, can we really believe what's written in this notebook? Nobody touches this notebook with me. And when I sleep, it's under lock and key. I don't remember writing that I killed Dumas, but I guess I must have.
Well, and now that we have a confession, I'm afraid I must render my verdict.
Of all that... Yes, Your Honor. Please give your ruling now, while Ellen is asleep. I want the woman I love to be set free as soon as possible. Sorin really does love Ellen after all, doesn't he? Yeah. So this is how it ends. But is that how it really went down? Is there really no way for them both to be happy?
I know we should consider anything written in this notebook to be the truth, but still.
I myself wrote of the crime in my notebook. No further proof is necessary. Sorin himself wrote it in his notebook. Wait a minute.
Very well. I will now give my verdict.
Ellen is about to be found not guilty, and Sorin will be convicted for the crime instead. And yet... Am I really ready for the judge to give his ruling? He had it in his hands all the time? No. No one has still one more avenue left to explore.
This court finds the defendant, Ellen White.
Your Honor, there's still something that bothers me about that notebook.
Oh, is there?
What are you doing, Mr. Wright? All you have to do is keep quiet, and your client's a free woman. I know, but I think there might be more to this case than meets the eye. I'm not quite sure yet, but I think there still might be a way. A way for Ellen and Sorin to be happy.
What do you mean by more than meets the eye, Mr. Wright?
I believe the question here, Your Honor, should be... Why was the incriminating page torn out in the first place?
Why? To destroy the evidence, I would imagine.
Removing it from the notebook is the same as removing it from Mr. Sprocket's memory, which means he wouldn't have been able to trick the police if he came under suspicion. No, if he wanted to cover up his crime, he would have to remember that he had done it. Just what are you getting at with this line of inquiry, Mr. Wright?
Yes, please explain so we can all understand.
Yes, Your Honor. The page was torn out of the notebook because he wanted to forget what happened. It was torn by accident. Somebody else tore it out. The incriminating page was torn out by somebody else.
What? Order! Order! Are you claiming a third person interfered with the notebook?
It's not all that surprising if you consider what's happened up until now. That's both the car accident and the murder of Dumas Gloomsbury. There was always a cover-up not far behind. But I had my notebook with me at all times. Did you? Because I remember you were in a panic yesterday because you couldn't find it. That's true.
And so who orchestrated this particular cover-up, Mr. Wright?
He also remembers that, by the way. If we think back over the course of the trial, it's pretty easy to guess. The one who may have tried to tamper with Sorin's memories is... the only person other who had the book in hand.
Take that!
The one who tampered with the notebook in order to manipulate Mr. Sprocket's memory. Is Pierce Nickety. Pierce. Pierce tried to tamper with my memories. Pierce was manipulating me? Case in point, the 2 receptions that were held to cover up the murder. It was Mr. Nickety who directed the guests and orchestrated the entire scheme. No, it can't be. Which of my memories are mine, and which have been rewritten? When did he start rewriting my memories? Who wrote this? And this? And this? And this, and this, and this, and this? Ah! Here's a jetpack. He literally took off! Ah!
Oh, hot!
Look, Nick, he's coming back down. My memories. Ellen. Mr. Sprocket.
And bailiff, please get Mrs. Sprocket to the infirmary on the double. Mrs. Sprocket has been taken to the infirmary. We don't have to worry about him running away, so let us resume where we left off.
Your Honor, the defense would like to call Pierce Nickety to the stand. This is a bit up for time for it. Maybe not then. Maybe I should end the episode here. I'd have thought this would be one. We already know he carried out the cover-up to protect the company and Mr. Sprocket. What more do you want from him? This time it's different. The notebook, or rather Mr. Sprocket's memories, have been tampered with. That means the only person who knows the whole truth is now Mr. Nickety. So tell me, are you actually trying to drum up a third suspect in order to exonerate the defendant and her groom? I'm not drumming up anything, nor do I have grounds to accuse him of anything. Yet. All I know is that Mr. Nickety is the only one who knows the truth. And I think he's still hiding something. Something we don't know about yet. No grounds yet, is it?
Well, Miss Wentworth, does the prosecution consent to call in the witness to the stand?
It does, Your Honor. However, I would like a little time to talk with the witness before we do. That's what I thought. The feeling of it, the beat of it. We played enough Phoenix, right?
Very well. We will break for a 20-minute recess.
And we will break for a day recess. Because, of course, when both people fall unconscious, or when all the people there fall unconscious, that's usually the time where we go to a little bit of a break. So, when it came back, I was a bit surprised that it didn't go to one. But we have gone to one, with the doodly doodly doos. We continue on next time, here on Phoenix Wright, Spirit of Justice. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.